Hello, everyone. Today is June 14th, 2023. This is the Kubernetes Data Protection Working Group meeting. I think today we want to continue with our CPT update. Ivan, you want to give an update here?
Yeah, I moved the old pull request to a new one. So this the older one was still created from a fork, which we no longer have permissions to change the collaborator settings and read-write permissions. So I just created a fork from my GitHub account, and then I just granted like column per sort like push permission to it. And in terms of the cap documents itself, I copy all the metadata, I guess, like from the previous cap to this one. I added some like a really high level test plans in the test plan section. So I think that part would be that part will continue to evolve as more review feedback is captured. Also, I included like I updated in the alternate solution sections like all the previous prototypes that we have done around like aggregated API server, volume populator, and also the the initial like those REST endpoint to hop proposal, and provide like just a bit of information on why they were previously rejected. I didn't go into too much details, and wherever is relevant, I just provide links because there's so many discussions from those previous proposals. I also updated the production readiness review sections, just at least like those subsections that are required for the alpha release. So yeah, other more involved like checklists, like the metrics, like HA, all those things like they're not required until beta. So yeah, I think like also Xing, like those part, especially the test plan part, they're always like not clear to me, like how much detail we need to provide. I just look back at some of the previous 6 storage caps. I think most of them are pretty high level without being boiled down into the details. So just yeah, if you have any thoughts there, just let me know how much to involve, how much like details to include there.
Yeah, I can review that. So also is this you go ahead.
So I didn't include any of the proposal nor like the slide deck. I'll leave that up to Colin Prasad to determine like when is the appropriate time to include those and how to convey and communicate those details.
Oh, the design details section, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
Placeholder. Okay, this is the placeholder. Okay.
Yeah, this is the latest template. Yeah, the design details. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a big chunk. Under design detail, there's supposed to be a big chunk in there before the test plan.
Evan, I'll get started next week. I'm pretty busy this week.
Yep. And then also like the the cap MD is included as well. The production readiness MD is included in as well in the PR. So
okay.
Yeah. The PRR reviewer might change. It used to be John, but like I think now they have more people. At least I'm shadowing on in the group. So
yeah, but I think he should still be the approver because he reviewed this one before. I think what normally what they do is he probably will ask the shadow to review it first. Then he will be the one who still does the approve.
Yeah.
So
and because like all of this is going to be out of tree, like so hopefully it won't be too much back and forth.
Yeah, we can pin them later. I think after the design.
Yeah. Like I think like if we So yeah, I think we chatted about this on Slack. I think the next step would be for us to share this with the CSI at the CSI community meeting next week.
So
And
yeah,
then,
I think, let's see if I have a link. I think I put a link here. You actually should add a link there right now, right? You attended that meeting before, right, Yvonne?
I did, yeah, I did.
So you actually you see that there is already another
Yes,
another thing here, which means I don't even know if we hopefully we have time,
okay.
but you should just add your topic in the queue, right? If we can't get it this meeting, then next meeting, right?
Yeah,
but
we
hopefully
can.
we can get it. Yeah, just can you add your name and your the link similar to the stock?
Yeah.
I have this one in here. Yeah, so it's in the agenda doc. If you can, add your name and add the link of the CSI spec PR.
Yeah.
Is that updated, or do you need to update that one? I do not remember.
Yeah, I've made a new revision for that, so so we can strip out the discussions from last time. I'll send out
the CSI spec one.
Oh, not the CSI spec one, but just the slides.
No, we haven't updated the CSI spec.
I was talking about this one because next Wednesday, there is a CSI community meeting, right? This is just happens like once a month. So you guys should have this discussed over there. So add is like similar to this one, right? Add your name, add this your CSS spec PR here, so that we could discuss in this meeting, because you do have to have that PR merged first before the CAP can be merged.
Okay. Yeah. I think it would. I think it would make sense. Yeah. So we can include that for sure. I think
you should have but it's better to have the CAP updated before that time. But even if it's not, I think it's still good to start talking about it.
Yeah. I think right now, like, our current thinking is like at least like so we will include that, like the slide deck and the CSI spec PR. Our current thinking is like at least go through the slide deck that Kyle has first, because if that changed, the CSI spec would also change, right? So
right, yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm not sure how much details will be changing in the CSI spec.
CSI spec is a lower details. It has lower level details, and
there's a section there on the CSI spec changes, basically of the RPCs.
Hey Xing.
Yeah. Oh, hi.
Is it possible to have like provisional CAP approval pending CSI spec changes merging? Because we have this chicken and egg
you're talking about the modified volume one.
Well, this one too. We have this the system where
provisional.
Like,
I think provisional should be fine. I think and there's a provisional. We could.
I feel like every time there's a CSI spec proposal, people ask like, well, what are you? How is this going to be used? What is the CAP? So we can go see what the high level interface is going to be. But then we say, well, we can't merge the CAP until the CSI spec change is done. And so it's like we have this.
Yeah,
you got to break the cycle at some point and get everyone to sort of agree in principle on how the features should work, and then say, okay, step one is getting the CSI work done, and then step two is getting the Kubernetes work done.
Yeah,
and we got to break that deadlock.
I think provisional should be fine if we just merge the CAP as provisional. But if it says implementable, then we need to get this, the CSI side PR merged first, right? So that's
okay.
Yeah,
but I mean, is there a mechanism for moving something from provisional to implementable in the middle of a cycle if the right things happen? Or is that, too aggressive?
So that seems to be wrong, right? Because then the CAP merge deadline says it should not change the status like that, right? So that's like
okay.
That means so that's the thing.
So yeah. Yeah, actually we got the anyways, yeah. So I would include like I'll update this the CSI community meeting agenda right after this call. So
okay.
But I want to confirm that. So one thing, Carl and Prasad, will you folks be able to attend this next week? Because I'll be you know, timing wise, I'll be out of office next week. Would you folks be able to attend?
Yeah, it's the same time, this time slot next week, right?
Yeah, it's the same time. Yeah, and then the meeting, this will be the 6 storage meeting, Zoom meeting link.
Okay.
Yeah, not the data protection one. Yeah.
I mean, is it okay though that we present essentially what we've gone over, the design as opposed to the KEP update? That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think like you can present the design without, you know, like we discussed last week, right? If we get the KEP updated, that's great. But if we don't have time for it, then
I mean, most of the presentation is about the Kubernetes implementation, right?
Yeah, I was going to say for the CSI meeting, you really want to focus on the CSI spec changes and try to view it through a CO neutral lens.
Yes.
So, I mean, it helps to be able to point to, you know, Kubernetes as an example of one CO that will implement this, but you want to be able to present it in a way that's not Kubernetes specific.
Yeah.
So do you think, I think they are planning to show those slides that have been showing in the data protection working group. You think that's a good idea, or you suggest something else?
Yeah, because like folks like won't have any idea.
If it's not Kubernetes, it's maybe hard for them to explain.
I was going to say, we want to focus on what the CSI RPCs are. Like that has to be the starting point. Like I think a lot of the people in that meeting will be the same people that come to these meetings. I don't know if there will be how many people there will be that will not have seen this presentation in that meeting. And in that meeting, what we're really concerned about is like just what are the implications for CSI at that level.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are 3 slides on the changes to the RPC. I mean, I didn't focus very much on them in the presentations in this meeting, but there are 3 slides there. I did not bother to put together anything about how the packaging changes and all, because that's specific to the implementation. But I don't know if those 3 slides will be enough.
So maybe just to focus on, basically shorten those slides, right? Maybe just to summary.
Do you have is there so I'm sorry for not knowing this in advance. Is there already a PR that includes all of the spec changes that are proposed for this?
We have sorry, hang on a sec. We have a PR, but it was still the older I guess we have a PR in the CSI repo, but it is still based on the former like solution.
Okay, but my recommendation then is get that PR in sync with the new proposal and start from that. That should be the starting point of the presentation. Is here's the PR with the exact changes that we want to talk about, and then flesh out, you know, and this is why with slides.
So if that's the case, then folks may not have enough time to complete, right? Is that right, Carl? I heard you were saying.
Yeah, I'm not this week. I'm pretty busy. So
okay.
Well, so there may not be bandwidth, as Xing mentioned. There's another topic we have queued up for next week.
That's true. Yeah,
so it may be the next month before we actually get to this topic anyway. So you have time.
Yeah, actually, you know, one thing we have not talked about in this meeting, right, is the proposal for the RPC. Essentially, there were 2 things which were left dangling in the original PR, and that is, do we do fixed block versus extent-based, you know, all that type of stuff. So the proposal, the gRPC proposal I put out, right, in this series of slides has kind of support for that, but no one over here has debated that, you know, for or against, or said it's stupid or whatever, right? We should really spend some time looking at it, maybe 10 minutes.
In this meeting?
Yes, because I mean, before we go out, we should.
Sure, you want to talk about that now? Then please.
I mean, yeah, sure. If you could just pull
should I stop? That I will stop sharing if you have anything.
No, you can pull up the slide from last meeting.
Which
it's all right.
Oh.
Whatever, any of the slide links that hasn't changed from last meeting, maybe.
Not this one. Which one is this? This slide? This one?
No.
Version 5?
Sure,
no?
This will work. This will work. Yeah.
There are several. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I put this. So I think it's the RPC proposal. So scroll number 6 onwards.
This one? Okay.
Yeah. So the next after that, yeah.
Yeah, it might be easier that you actually share yourself, when to move.
All right.
Unless you have problems sharing, I make you co-host because otherwise I don't know when you want to move.
I have too many things on my desktop right now. Okay, I'll try to bring it up. Hold on.
Okay, I'll stop. Okay, while doing that, maybe Ben, so you were asking about the in the middle changing from provisional to like implementable in the mid, like after the cap deadline, right? But if we do that, I think we have to go through the like release team, right? It's like requesting for exception. If that's the case, then I think that's fine. We could give that a try.
Okay, I know that it's like a 4-month cycle, and some people are trying to
I know,
certain deadlines, and I feel bad when people are told, oh, you got to wait for 4 months.
I know.
I mean, sometimes it's the appropriate answer.
I think
maybe it's usually the appropriate answer.
But I think it's probably worth trying. So we could.
But I think we should try to help people figure out like what order to do stuff in, because we tell people to go in circles, and that's not so helpful.
Very much appreciated.
Okay, so this is the CSI part of the spec, right? And in this,
Carl, we are seeing your Slack instead of your.
Oh my God! You see my Slack? Oh gosh.
Yeah, you're sharing some other desktop.
Yeah, this is a Zoom problem. It's a me problem actually, but yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, it was Slack. Let's see. Yep. All right. I hope you can see the proposal now.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So in this one, we had proposed adding a snapshot metadata service to the spec.md. And in that snapshot metadata service, there'd be two RPCs, get allocated and get delta. The first one being to return metadata on the allocated blocks of a snapshot, and the second to get the changes between two snapshots. The first one would be used typically for a first full backup, and the second one would be used for incrementals. These are, I think, relatively straightforward. It's this one that starts getting, where we have a lot of stuff. This is trying to call out the sorry, let me go back once. This one takes, a get allocated request, the first one, or get delta request, the second one, and both return streams of data. One's a stream of get allocated response, the other stream of get delta response. And this is the gRPC stream stuff we talked about. So, the delta request, right, we know these arguments from the discussions. It's like opaque session tokens, identities of volumes and snapshots, etc. A starting offset, a byte offset, right, and maximum results. It's the return stuff that which I think we need to talk about. So this is returning a stream of get delta response. And in this, that's the last thing down here. Get delta.
Well, hold on, just before we skip over that, the starting byte offset, this is our pagination mechanism.
No. The pagination mechanism is basically this. It returns a stream, and the stream can contain n results in one, and that the max results would be kind of the pagination thing.
Yeah.
Starting byte offset is so that if you want to, right, you can start recovering stuff only after a particular point in the object you're targeting.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Is suppose there's a 500,000 blocks that have changed, and so you're schlepping that over the gRPC connection, and someone reboots you after 100,000 of them.
Yes.
And now you want to like pick up where you left off. Like, are you meant to use the starting byte offset to figure out where you were, so you can continue where you left off?
Yes, that is the intent.
So that sounds like pagination to me.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Semantics, yeah, but that's the intent, correct?
Okay.
And you can control how many results come back in each callback, right, for max results. And I guess the server side, this is client side, of course, the server side will, of course, put a cap on max results if it wants to. So, so what you get back in the callback is the get delta response, which is the last structure down here. And in this one, right, I was looking at some of the original documents from right, and it wasn't very clear whether we settled on extent-based or block-based. So, but I think the original document had both, so I kind of copied the data types from there. So the data type essentially is it fixed length or is it variable length? All right, fixed length will be by block, and variable length will be by extent. And this kind of matches, I think, what we see in a lot of the low-level vendor stuff. Like AWS, EBS has got a block-based, and VMware has got extent-based, right? So anyway, so it would come back with a metadata type, and then we need to know the volume size bytes. Unfortunately, to put it into every one of these things, all have a separate RPC, which makes no sense. But that's only one integer here. And then this is the repeated block metadata. And in the block metadata, it would have the, this data structure here, which is the byte offset for this piece of data, of metadata, the size of the metadata, and some vendor-specific field. This would address, things like AWS requiring to send a block token if it wanted to. It's none of the business of this API to say what the vendor wants to have. But,
Well, I was going to say this will be a huge problem in the CSI spec, is having something that's vendor specific. Like, all
right, then what would you suggest?
Not having it would be the. I would say
all right, so that's fine. That's fine. But let's say I wanted to use this API to get stuff back. Then I have we don't have a companion API to go with this, right? Which would recover the blocks. In the Kubernetes space, we don't have a problem. We would mount the volume, create volume a snapshot and mount it and return data back, whether or not that's sufficient for the infrastructure, right? But so we could seek to the blocks, but otherwise we have no companion API to get it. So if I look at the spectrum of APIs, right, the EBS ones, for example, give a block token, and I need that block token to recover the block through the network API.
So hold on, I want to understand this. You're saying in at least one implementation, like there's an optimization that can be performed if you have per block, I guess this vendor specific metadata, and then as a different API where you can just get the actual block without having to mount the volume and read the block, and that's somehow faster. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right. I mean, not just mount the volume, it's create a volume from the snapshot and then mount that volume. Okay, so the create a volume from a snapshot, depending on the infrastructure, can be a cheap or expensive operation, right? And beyond that, right, depending on the API, the context of that call, right? So in the EBS API, for example, and I don't know what's behind that token, they return a token. I'm assuming it's got security and other connotations. It's a token that expires, and you got to give that token in the call to get the block. So
right. So I totally get why, like on EBS, this is a better way. Like we have to build things that are portable, and so like there is no way that that's portable, right? So
well, I don't know if it's not portable. It's opaque.
Right, but I was saying that the consumer of the API would have to then know that, like, oh, this is a special Amazon thing that I'm going to go use only on Amazon, right? And that's just not portable. So
I totally understand that, and that's why I want to discuss this stuff here, okay? Because we never have a chance to discuss this. So yes,
I guess my thinking is like if we think that is a problem that's worth solving, then like we should also solve that problem in a portable manner, like having a data plane level version of this.
Exactly.
Because everything we've talked about has been metadata.
Yes.
Right. We're in the metadata path, and we think we can do that in a portable way, which is good. But like this just isn't portable. And like if we think that the portable way of doing it is so bad as to be unpalatable, then that cries out for trying to standardize the data path too, right?
And that was my intent to raise that specter.
Ben, I wonder, could we do something similar to what we do with the storage class. So have some class that have those opaque things hidden there. Would that work?
I don't think so, because here, with the storage class parameters, it's the SP that has the magic, right? And there are many different SPs with different magic, with different parameters that mean things. But the clients are all the same, right? The client doesn't need to know what's going on. Here, the client of the API would have to know, it would have to know two things. One, I'm talking to Amazon or EBS. And two, I need to have special code to take that token out and go call a different API than what I normally do. So the client would have a whole separate branch of logic. If EBS do the good thing, otherwise do the fallback thing. And that's what we want to avoid, right?
Can you hide this within volume snapshot class? So
what do you mean? I mean,
parameters under volume snapshot class can hide this information. Would that work?
No, because this is the direction is backwards, right? Like snapshot class stuff goes from the CO into the SP. This is stuff coming from the SP back to the CO. Now the CO is like processing vendor specific stuff, and we can't write down what it is. That's the fundamental problem. Is if you can't write a sentence that clearly says what is in that field.
But I was wondering if this is something that can be set up by an admin ahead of time, for just then that kind of hidden there, kind of.
But I mean, the problem is if other vendors start doing this too, you're just going to have a giant if then else tree somewhere in the code that says, if Amazon do this, if Azure do that, if NetApp do the third thing, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid by having a standard, is so that you can write it once and it just works. So this is taking you in the wrong direction to have something that is vendor specific coming backwards, where you're going to end up having different logic depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah. So the thing would be, if there was a companion session service, right? As a companion service to get blocks, then the idea was that this block metadata object, right? This message could be given to get that block. And so you just take this data structure opaquely and call that thing and get the block back.
Kyle, I think even if we have a companion API, somehow the backend will still need to convey this information back to the client first, right? Before the client can call the companion.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the backup application that decides whether it wants to fetch the block or not, right?
So it's still dependent on this vendor specific things to get back into the client. Yeah.
Yes.
Client, right?
Yes.
So I guess what I would say is that there's nothing preventing someone from writing an EBS specific backup thing that talks to Amazon and gets the right information and talks directly to the appropriate APIs and does a specific implementation for Amazon, right? So you can write that today if you want to. It's great, but CSI is about writing the API that everyone can use, right? That's why we have it, so that you can, if you implement the CSI spec, it will just work with everybody.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine by me. That's fine by me. I think then, we can let the AWS guys come back with some proposal, right? If they, let's say we remove this vendor specific field, correct?
Yeah.
And so that means, right, essentially from a Kubernetes perspective, we know what we have to do. We have to do, volume from snapshot and then seek and get the data. If there were a future API, right, then that future API has to address all the aspects of how you get the context back.
Right. I mean, yeah, you were talking about a data plane API to actually get the bytes of the diff.
That's right.
Directly. Yeah. And we should build that, if there's enough interest on both the vendor side or the storage vendor side and the backup vendor side to have a standard way of doing that, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from a backup vendor side, there's a lot of interest. Okay.
I'm sure, but it's the problem is, of course, getting everyone to agree.
That is correct. Yeah. By the way, the implementation proposal on the Kubernetes side, the session stuff we set up would work for that for a data plane API too. Okay. There's no change. That same thing would work.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, we'll have to think about then. Is there a? I don't know if you want to tie the two proposals together like this, because this proposal, so much time and effort has gone into it, and it feels like we are at a point where like there's at least something everyone could agree to that you could in principle write a portable implementation of that would, you know, it might not be as good as directly pulling the blocks out of the API, but it would still work.
Yeah.
And so like we could do that and then have a completely separate follow-on effort to add the data API, or we could try to expand this to do both. And that's kind of up to you. I'm inclined to get this one done and then go on to the next problem.
Yeah.
Rather than
well, we actually be able to do standardize the data API though, because that's not CSI normally. It's just for the control plane, right?
Well, I mean, that's something to be. I mean, we need a proposal, and then we can critique it.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can think about that later after we got this one.
Yeah, just tagging on to that very quickly. Again, right? People just keep asking us, what can I do with all this metadata if I can't continue to use CSI to pull data? So there might be a case that we can make there to say, hey, you know, this cap is half of the story. We still somehow need to have a story for the other half of the data path.
Yeah, because this kind of opens the door, right? Once we can get acceptance that we can use the gRPC call to bypass, you know, the CO to get data, then, you know, then we have an avenue to say, yes, this is an efficient mechanism of getting data blocks back.
Well, it might not be gRPC, right? I mean, the CSI is going to be gRPC, but this standardized way of actually getting the blocks, maybe we would look at it and say gRPC is the wrong transport, or maybe not. I think that's a decision we would have to look at when we were designing a data API. Is what is the right transport for moving potentially large amounts of data?
Yeah. So for what it's worth, like in the current like CSI spec PR, we specifically so under like the equivalence of block metadata, right? We specifically added like a token property there to capture that that kind of data movement where the backend give you back a token and you use it to fetch the data blocks. The assumption there that we make is like we try to limit like the data movement to two, I guess, strategies. One is that you restore the PVC, you mount it on some sort of data mover part, and you read the offset and bytes from there. And then the other one is like this that we are trying to solve here is like, oh, so the backend give us a token, and it's a more efficient way to download those blocks. So we just say, hey, you know, here's a token field that if you have it, you put it in there. At least I don't know if it is any better, but at least like it's the user of it, the consumer of it will say, oh yeah, it is a token. Then, you know, that token-ish type of thing that I know I can use for data path movement. But kind of what we're talking about here, if we just remove the vendor specific stuff, that's fine as well until like a later time where we got more inputs on it.
The semantics are horrible. I mean, I agree with Ben. You know, the semantics become horrible with this vendor specific, because not only are we having this vendor specific, we're also saying we have support for fixed versus variable, right? So for example, if it's an extent-based thing, there's no way to specify a block, a per block token, etc., that were required by an API, right? So it's just weird semantics. So maybe it's pull it out.
I was also going to ask, why include both fixed length and variable length in the same API?
That's why I said we need to talk, because in Fong's original proposal, they had this type of data structure, fixed and variable. There are two streams of thought here, right? I mean, if there's a lot of change, and let's, you know, for example, if the entire, you know, 3/4 of the volume are changed and it's contiguous, you know, an extent-based thing is amazingly efficient in expressing that change. On the flip side, right, you know, block-based says, okay, these are literally the blocks I want. So
is it the case that you can convert between them in theory, and it's just a question of which one's more efficient?
You can absolutely convert between them. And as a backup vendor, we convert between things, right? We talk to different subsystems. We get change blocks. We get extents from subsystems, and we get blocks from others, and yeah, we convert because we have no choice.
Well, then it sounds like this design leaves it up to the SP which one they want to use, and the SP is in a position to know what's more efficient on their system, right? And so as long as you can seamlessly convert between them on the CO side.
So the question is, should we put a stake in the ground and say, no, everyone returns blocks, or everyone returns extents? That's what that's what I want to ask over here.
Well, I think if neither one is clearly better, and it's going to be circumstantial, and it's not a big deal to force, because by including both of them, you're saying every backup software must support both, but each SP can pick and choose whether to support one or the other or both.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not terrible from where I'm sitting, right?
Yeah.
Because the SP might say, oh, I have an extent-based system, I'm always going to do extents. Another SP might say, I have a block-based system, I'm always going to do blocks. And a third one might say, I'm going to have a heuristic to decide what's more efficient on the fly.
Yeah.
And
that's why I think this is like a compromise API, and by itself it's fine. Only if you start tying it with a data retrieval API, that's when you could run into trouble. But again, that we can punt that issue for now, because we don't have such an API.
Yes.
I think like historically, right? Like when Fang first brought this up, the fixed versus variable length proposal, I think if I remember correctly, the conclusion was that we decided to park it aside for now. Yeah, it's like an optimization, but there are some, like, as we already surfaced here, there's some underlying assumptions. Back then we just decided that it's something that could be added if needed, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'll remove this vendor-specific field from the proposal, right? Just to note that, so all the parameters here are going to be expressed from the client makes a call to a server. The client has to provide all the parameters in the nomenclature of the server. Okay. So for example, in the Kubernetes case, the backup application, which is the Kubernetes application, is talking in terms of Kubernetes volume snapshots and Kubernetes volume IDs, etc. But and session token. But when the sidecar talks to the SP, right? The sidecar has to translate to the SP's language, which was handles, etc. So I mean, I don't know if you recall that from the proposal, but that was part of what that meant. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that's what we always do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to understand the structure of that message. If you could go back one more time. So the response has a single metadata type for the whole response. The volume size bytes is the size of the whole volume, right?
Correct.
And then you have an array of these actual metadata blocks, each one of which is just two uint64s, an offset, and a size.
Correct.
And I guess the thing that stinks is if it's fixed length, the size will always be the same, and you'll be wasting half your bandwidth.
I know. I agonized over that, and then I said, screw it. It's a few blocks, a few bytes wasted. This is all metadata. Never mind. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Okay. So the thing is this: if you go back to this, right, the way gRPC works, it doesn't allow us to return fixed properties plus a stream. It's either you return a stream or you return a set of properties. Okay. So I'm forced to return in that stream, right, everything. So I said, it's not worth agonizing over this. It's just a few bytes, right? And
I was going to say, if you did want to agonize over it and optimize the heck out of it, what you would end up with, I think, is two completely separate RPCs, like one for fixed length, the one for variable length, and then you'd have a capabilities API where the client could query which one is supported, so it knows which one to call. But then the problem is
so fast that it's mind-boggling.
Well, no, I mean, this is how everything works in regular CSI, right? We have capabilities that says this is what I do or this is what I don't do. It's not that bad, I'm just trying to think through, like, if you always have to specify the block size when you're doing fixed length, you lose the whole benefit of doing fixed length, and you may as well just always do variable length, right? That's the downside to this flavor of doing it this way. Is the only benefit that fixed length could possibly have over variable length is the ability to omit the size with every single block. And if you don't omit the size, then you haven't gained anything, and you may as well always do variable length. So that suggests to me that we should just make this an extent-based API and say you can smuggle in fixed length by having every variable length one have the same size, right?
Well, that poses a problem for API consumers, the client, because we don't want it changing midstream, right? If we just let it be, I mean, we don't have, is there a tacit understanding or specification saying that you can't change it from one block metadata to the next, right?
Well, okay, so I guess I want to understand this. So the worry is if we just omitted the metadata type and just had an array of block metadatas with offsets and sizes,
right,
and like, and most of them were 4K, but then one of them was 8K, like that somehow causes an issue for a client?
You know, I mean, it could cause an issue, but it certainly is smooth. It's easier. I would say it's more from, it's easier on the client if we knew, if one knows upfront what it is. But no, it wouldn't. It's not that much of an issue. If you're going to consider everything extent-based, then clearly fixed length fits in extent-based, right? It's easy. So in that case, you know, the client, I would assume, would maintain something like a bitmap or whatever, right? And
okay, so I'm beginning to see now. So what we're saying is it really is an array of variable length blocks, but if you specify that the type is fixed length in the response, that's just a hint that basically says, hey, your block length is always going to be the same.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send it to you over and over.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I withdraw my complaint. This makes perfect sense.
I think part of it was also like the reason why we have byte size or size byte there was previously in one of our really old prototypes where we tried to do like an end-to-end from like CBT metadata all the way down to like reading and seeking like the blocks. Like we use this as input parameters into like a tool like DD and said, you know, hey, now that you have the metadata, go and, you know, find this offsite byte and it is this long on this and fetch it and do something with it. So that I think that prototype kind of have some influence. Essentially, we use this to seek the blocks on disk when we restore the volume. So I think that prototype kind of influenced, like at least previously. I don't know about this case, but previously it influenced our thinking based on how the data was being pulled out or seek out of the block, the volume.
Okay. Yeah. We can continue on to the next page as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I mean, the next page is pretty much the same thing. It's just that this is the first API, the get allocated request. It just doesn't have two snapshots. The response is the same.
So Carl, sorry.
Go ahead.
So Carl, are we because again, essentially, right, based on our current design, there are two gRPC calls. One is between the backup software and, you know, the CSI driver, and then between the CSI driver and the, I guess the CSI plugin or whatever. So are we expecting to use the same gRPC spec for both calls?
Absolutely, or yeah, absolutely. I mean, you recall this figure, right?
Yeah.
This API, right, between the client and the sidecar is the gRPC, but between the sidecar and the SP is the same gRPC. It's just that it's now over the Unix domain socket.
And different parameters, yes.
Yeah, different translated parameters, right? The namespace has changed.
Okay. I think like it's just I think previously again we don't have to solve or address this right now, but just previously like one of the feedbacks that I received from James Stefanik is that like the current CSI spec like is versioned in such a way that it doesn't expect like an external consumer, and not saying that we can't, but he just said like something that when the discussion comes, like the versioning would be how we're going to version this gRPC is going to be, it will be something that will have quite a bit of a discussion on how we version it, because currently the way we version it in a Unix socket call like paradigm is going to be different when you expose it to the external client, right? So again, it's just a for FYI thing for all of us here.
I mean, I don't know how you version gRPCs, but
yeah, I was gonna say I'm confused because we have versioning solved pretty much for CSI and the way we handle gRPC. We have a mechanism for introducing new fields and new methods, and we have an alpha mechanism so that if we introduce something that we later decide we don't like, we can get rid of it. But once it's approved, you can never get rid of it. So I'm not sure what the versioning concern is. Like, if this proposal, if accepted, there's no intent for it to immediately change, right? You could implement it and it could stay the same forever in principle.
Yeah. My understanding of versioning in the CSI is that you can add additional RPCs to a service and add capability bits saying these new RPCs exist, but by that capability bit. And that's the extent of change. You cannot, these get cast in concrete once they're accepted.
Yes. Right. I think like that versioning topic.
Other than with one caveat, these data structures here, the data structures can change, I think. If we do something correctly right up front and say put some a version type field on the top, then you can add additional fields below, to the end. But the order and existence of these properties, right, cannot change. But let's say if I wanted to put another thing, I could put a number 7 over here after max results and extend the request.
Right,
but
right. Again,
but the requirement is an SP that ignored parameter 7 would still have to function correctly, even if parameter 7 was specified.
That is correct. Yeah.
Right. I think like the discussion around the gRPC versioning was brought up in the context of like what does alpha mean, right? So right now the alpha is like the definition of alpha is like between like it's like it communicate like a certain semantic between the CSI driver and the SP, right? But now if you expose it to an external client, does that alpha that's a semantic of the alpha and beta or whatever still carry the same like meaning behind it? Again, it wasn't
all alpha means. All alpha means is that we reserve the right to yank it out, so don't depend on it. Like we won't literally break something that depends on it, but we might remove it from the spec, and people will stop using it. That's all it means. It's just a mechanical way to make sure that like if we do yank something and then later we introduce a new feature, that it won't cause horrible things to happen. And there is no concept of beta. It's alpha and GA. That's how it works on the CSI spec. I wanted to get back to the slide you were showing about the get allocated. I just want to understand, this is basically the equivalent of get delta compared to an all zeros snapshot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious why it needs a whole separate RPC. You can't just.
We could. I mean, over here, essentially, it comes down to a base snapshot being specified, but no target.
You mean a target, but no base?
Or target, but no base, right? I mean, essentially, whatever you want. There's only one.
Basically, saying what is not zeros, and then it tells you.
What is not zeros? Yeah, yeah. So if you look at, I confess I was. To some extent, right, I was looking at vendor APIs, and vendor APIs have these, these type of variants, because sometimes in essence, the get allocated request is actually not necessarily talking about a snapshot, but it could be a snapshot. But actually, it is a snapshot. That's true. I mean, I was looking at Ceph APIs, I looked at VMware APIs. I think even EBS APIs, I was looking at those, right? They all have this equivalent, like, it's what's in the snapshot. What are the non-zeros on this snapshot?
It just seems to me that you could reuse the other RPC and say, if base snapshot is the empty string, then interpret it as a comparison against the all zeros.
You could, and that's why I put this out here to be throw darts at. You certainly can, but
I guess we would have to ask the question: will every implementation support both ways of doing it? Support both the get delta and get allocated, or will there be some implementations that can do one but not the other? And do we want to support those?
Actually, I don't think it will help anybody if you do one and not the other, because seriously, as a backup vendor, how in the world am I supposed to do an optimized anything if I can't, for the first full backup, I'm going to have to read the entire volume? Okay. I mean, that's crazy. I need to know only what blocks were written to the volume.
Yeah. No, I agree. It kind of makes sense. So then we should just say they're both mandatory, or you implement them both or neither.
Yeah.
It makes that's even more of an argument for smashing them together into one RPC that just does both things.
You want, I mean, it's just clearer in terms of documentation and reading. But if you want to have one, it's not a problem. As you said, base is 0 or base is an empty string here.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of future evolutions will probably affect both. And if you only have one, it's easier to evolve it.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have super strong feelings.
I just threw it out there for discussion because, as you see, right, the data structures are the same in terms of the response.
Can you briefly explain what stream means in gRPC? Because I don't happen to know that.
Yeah, I actually, do we have, let's see the link to Prasad's, we had, this is the code we showed last time. There we go. And Prasad just forward me to the.
You want to see the client or service?
Okay, yeah, client. Let's start with the client. Which is the client? This one?
Yeah. In CMD, there should be client.
Okay. So in this client, we have in a gRPC setup sessions, session object, get session status, get change blocks. Okay. So here is the call to get delta. Okay. This guy gets back a stream. Then it goes into a loop doing a stream receive. Each data structure returned in that loop, right, is a response, which is that data structure I showed you. And so this just reads from the stream. Does that make sense? So the stream comes back like this.
Yeah, I mean, at the Go line level, this makes sense. I'm just trying to think through like the security implications and what actually happens on the wire.
Oh, over the wire, I believe it uses the same. If you think about the transport, whatever call is made over here, it uses the same socket to get the data back.
Right, but I'm thinking through like error handling. Like, what if you get, through a bunch of messages and then an error occurs? Like, how does the client interpret that error? I don't think we use stream anywhere else in CSI. So I'm just have to think through what the implications are.
Right there. So in the gRPC spec, there was a lot about streaming. Let's see, do I have that out somewhere? I don't. I think I closed it a long time ago. Yeah, there was. Yeah, they had examples of streaming. So it's like I don't know if there's anything special that I can recall. It's like any protocol where you're reading blocks through stuff. The client has its own state. The server has its own state, right? and the client will have to retry or something based on its state. So now, you notice when it's doing let's go to the client side for this, because when it's doing, sorry, the server side for this, when the server is sending data, the server has a loop itself. I hope this is the right.
Sorry, 1 minute warning.
Yeah, I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole on this because we don't have the time to, but I would say CSI doesn't fully take advantage of all the gRPC features. It's sort of a subset, and this would expand that subset, and maybe that's fine, but we'd have to think through the implications of it. Okay. If there was a way to like get the same effect without leveraging the stream semantic, maybe we would consider doing that instead.
Actually, I think it would be a different proposal. I mean, the whole reason we were able to do what we did was because of the stream. So it would be a totally different type of proposal, I think, to keep and require more.
We couldn't just have like a chain of calls where each call returned an array of variable size.
But we'd have to keep state and have a pagination token, right, which will return back, things like that.
Hey, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. The hour.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Xing. Sorry.
No, thank you. So, okay, so we try to bring this up in the next CSI community meeting, but if not, that's fine, right? I think we're not ready. Are we ready?
Absolutely put it on the agenda, and if we have time.
All right, yeah, put it there, yeah.
Yeah, I will
add to the queue.
I will remove that vendor specific thing.
Okay.
Oh yeah, thank you. That would be a big sticking point.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, you, everyone. Hey, bye.
Thanks, folks.